start the streaming, and then all right, so I'm going to record this session also, so even if later time you guys want to go back and look at it, just to make sure you guys understand Redux or some of the concepts, so it's going to be there. What is it?
If we weren't here, if nobody were here, would you still teach this class for?
No, even if there's one person, I will teach it.
Okay. What if there's no?
Then yeah, no.
What if you are the one person?
I put that in my survey. I was like, Daniel is like, just goes above and beyond to teach.
What if Nick was the
He
one
goes out of
person?
his way to let everything
Nick.
No, what if you were the only one here to take Daniel's lesson?
Oh, then he'll teach me.
There you go. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Nick, if you have some time, if you can present, we looked at that solution, the problem that we were working on Saturday. He did you guys go ahead and did anybody try? No. Okay. Nick kind of went ahead. The for loop that I was talking about, he kind of cracked it and removed that for loop, kind of come up with a really good solution. So towards the end of class, maybe he can come and present to you guys. It was kind of similar situation, but I told you guys that the for loop is still expensive, and he kind of went ahead and removed it and came up with a better solution.
So
All right.
when are you gonna start working at Google?
He works in Carvana.
He's stepping up. He went to Carvana. Now he's going to.
Carvana is
Yeah.
I saw you
It's
guys.
great.
Yeah.
It's great.
It was actually the when I show you guys the code, you'll be like, oh my god, like this is actually pretty simple.
Yeah.
But the
Daniel was saying.
but the thing is like, so based on like a lot of people who learn programming at a very like rudimentary level only know like how to do things in kind of a rudimentary sense. So when you think of like, a collection of numbers, I mean your mind automatically thinks like, in order to get like, the sum of all those elements, I need to, look through. And in the case of like the load balancer one, the wording will kind of trick you into doing something in a naive way when really there, is a better solution that's less expensive and may take less time. So, but I'll go over it with you guys, once Daniel does you guys.
And the variables name that he used, I love those variable names. He has proper load balancer, and he's actually using the right terminology, as the question said. Yeah. Yeah, he's using really good variable names. All right. So remember, this is what we did on Saturday. This is the counter application that we created, Redux one. This was a React app, and we converted it into Redux. All right. So we used actions. We had our components, and then our component was connected to our Redux store. Okay, and that was the last line over here. And then in our app.js, we have our store, and then reducer, single one, and then our component was actually sending all these actions. Okay, so today what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another component, right? This is a class component, and this time I'm going to add a component connected to Redux again, and then this time I'm going to create a function component, so you guys can see that we only need properties. There's no state involved. Okay. So for my next component, it's going to be another counter, but this time what the counter would do is it will add by 2. So this one increments by 1, right? The next counter I'll add is incrementing and decrementing by 2. Okay. So the first thing is, let's go ahead and add our second counter. So I'm going to call it dose counter. How's that? Okay. So this counter is going to be adding by 2. Does that make sense? It does? Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and create a function component really quickly. So import React. Oops, why is my import not working? Oh, that's better. Import React. Okay. And I'm not going to use state, so I don't need a class or component. I don't need to import that. I'm going to create a function component, and let's call it dose counter. Okay. And this will be all by properties. So we'll go ahead and create our props and then export our function. export default, our component over here. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to copy the same card body, so it kind of looks similar, and just change the some of the contents. Let's see, what do I need? I need the card text and all that stuff. So I need to return. Okay, since this is a function component, we do a return, create a div card, same as the previous one. We'll just change the name. So we'll add those counter. Okay, and the last was our card body. So I'm importing card body, and then let's go ahead and add our card body component here, and then we are going to pass our thing as properties. Okay, so I'm expecting, I'm going to call it those count. I don't have this property yet, but we'll go ahead and create it. And then we are going to have our handle increment functions, same as from the previous ones. Okay, and then you can go ahead and copy our create those two functions inside our functions. So const, this is called handle increment. Okay, doesn't take anything, and it's going to be an arrow function. Okay, and it's going to return an action eventually. So we'll come back to this. Same thing, create this one. I'm just stubbing this out so that it stops complaining, and we are able to see that over here. Okay. All right. Again, at this point, there is no Redux involved yet. All right, just a function component. And then what we have to do is we have to display this on our main app. So let's go ahead and import this thing from /components. Okay, and then let's go ahead and display this. It's default, so I don't need this. Let's go ahead and okay, and then let's go ahead and show it just below this one. Okay. If everything looks good, it should say something. Okay, so I'm getting an error return. What am I missing over here? I have my divs, my card body. You guys see anything missing over here? Function. Create element of undefined. Is my export missing? No, there it is. Export default. And then my component, I am importing this. You guys see anything? Do I need to pass something here? Will that help? Let's see, what is it? Yeah, it's not. Oh, I don't know. It should be just a copy. Let's see. I don't think this is the issue. Something else. It has to be tied to some property, right? Yeah. No, it's something. This shouldn't affect that. So it's complaining about the return. Am I doing something? Return within one div. My divs are closing. Do you guys see anything? I don't know if it's the Redux part or not. I can't tell. And the reason is because this is part of um, this thing over here, provider. I wonder if it is trying to pass something and it doesn't. That's what is something. I'm not sure though. Let's see. Yeah, I imported over here, so this should be good. Cannot read, probably create element. What is it? Install what? No, yeah, I have one. This is working. This means I have the pack. This is the issue I saw. So you see this? Yeah, no, it's this is there's no React, so it's like default. So this might be it. Yeah, that was it. Okay. So I'm passing the dose count over here. It shows up on this one. Okay. So I've added another counter, and then this shows up. Right now, it's not connected to Redux, of course. Okay. So this is working. We know that we are able to connect to our component and pass in something, and it shows up over here. The next part would be to connect to our Redux store. Okay. So let's see what do we have here. Let's go ahead and start um, from our reducer over here. Okay. So right now we have count, which corresponds to the first component. If I'm adding another state over here, so I can just add another counter or anything that I want state to be, right? Right now before we saw just one state being added. Let's go ahead and add another state. Okay, and this is similar to when you do the set state. This belongs to one component, but this time we have global state, so we are going to put all our possible state variables in our app.js. Okay. Now, what's the next second step? I need a reducer. Okay. Let's go ahead and rename this to counter reducer. Counter reducer, because I'm going to call that a different name. Let's make sure this is still working. Okay, comes up. Okay, this is still working, so this is good. All right. So the second is I have a new component, so I need a new reducer. All right, same as the previous one. Let's go ahead and create a new reducer here, counter. Okay, and this is my new reducer. Again, what does it take? It takes a state, same as the one that is just above it. Pass it initial state, right, and action, some action that needs to be passed in. Okay. The initial state, this I'm going to just use dose count, but this will set our initial state with 0. Okay, same as the first one. So let's look at the first one. Remember what was the coding part of this, that you have actions and then you return something like updated state in the reducer. Okay, so this time we are increasing by 2, so it's going to be very similar. The only difference would be that we are adding by 2. All right, so I'm going to minimize this and we can work on this one. So same as previous one, let's go ahead and add our switch statement. All right, this time the same thing, action.type. We still need to define action, so let's go ahead and say our actions are going to be those increment. Okay, and we're going to have a second case as well, so let's go ahead and type that out as well, and this is going to be decrement. Okay. We don't need these breaks because we're going to return, and then on default we can just return whatever the state that came in. If something comes in that doesn't match this, just give the regular state back, the initial state. Okay. Should return, so this will fix that. And in our increment, what are we returning? We are going to use the variable dose count that we declared over here, right? And then this is going to be updated to the new count by 2. Okay. Let's use the same pattern here. This time it's subtracting 2. Okay, everybody good so far? Same thing, we're just creating a new reducer, and this time my reducer kind of goes by 2 instead of 1. Okay, now let's make sure this is still working. We haven't broken this one. Yeah, this one is still good. Okay, now we have 2 reducers, and we need to pass the second reducer also to our store. Okay, remember I said if you have more than one, then the function is called combined reducers. That's the function that we are going to use. So before we start using it, we need to import that function. So it's called from our React Redux module. Oh, sorry, it should be just Redux. So this function belongs to our Redux module, and it's called combined reducers. There it is. Okay. So this is, if you have more than one, that's the function that you're going to use, and that gets passed in inside your create store. Right? So how do we use that? It's const, let's call it, give it a name called root reducer, and this is going to have all the possible reducers in our program. Okay, we're going to call the function combine, combine reducers, and then combined reducer takes in an object, and this is where you define all your reducers that you have in your app. All right, so right now we have 2 reducers. The first one is, let's call it, give it a name counter, and this is our counter reducer. Okay, and the second one, let's call it dose counter, and this is our dose counter reducer. Okay, let's change this name. Okay, so if you have more than one reducer, this is how you do it. You use the combined reducer function. Combined reducer function takes in an object, and within that object, you're going to define all your reducers, right, as property and value. All right. This thing on the left, you can give any name, but this one should match whatever your actual reducer is. Okay, and you will see, remember this definition over here, counter and dose counter, we're going to be reusing them somewhere else. All right, now what happens, you pass this, the return type of this combined reducers, to your store, and that's how you do it. Okay, any questions so far? Good. So this is how you do the combined reducers part. Now you see on the screen this kind of broke. It should have shown me an initial state of 0, but it's showing nothing. Okay, this means that something broke. Now if I do increment, it stopped working. Okay, now the thing with this is, when you are using your reducers, you need to, over here, when you are using the state variable, this is going back to the counter one that's already working, right? Over here, you need to mention the state, where is the state coming from, like which reducer, right? For example, this this state is coming from our counter reducer. Okay, so you need to mention that instead, in addition to just the state. So when we have just one reducer, and by default this works, but you have multiple reducers and you are using the combined reducers over here, then you need to mention the state belongs to this part or this reducer. Okay, so in our counter, this is the reducer that we are talking about. So the additional part would be the reducer property that you have mentioned over here when you're doing the combined reducer. Now if you see the count kind of shows up, if you click it, it's going to start working. All right, so remember that there's a global state, but within global state, your components are only worrying about the state that matters to them. All right, you can pull every possible state in your app, but my counter component doesn't need the dose counter or any other state. Okay, and this is how you mention over here that this component is only worried about this state. So that's why you mention, oh, this state belongs to this reducer, and within that there is a state called count. Use that. Okay. Again, remember the reason is because this is a global state. All possible states are defined over here, and your components are only concerned with the state that they require, and this is how you do it. Okay, again, this is only valid if you have more than one reducers and use the combined reducer method, and you are giving the name over here, this counter and those counter. So if you create in our dose counter component, we're going to use this name. Okay, when we're trying to pull the variable called dose count, this one. Okay, and this is back to working. All right, any questions so far? So this is how you use the combined reducers. Now let's go ahead and complete our dose counter, and it's going to be similar to our counter. So what's the next thing that I need to do? I need to connect this component to Redux. All right, and how do I connect it? What was the function called? Connect. All right, so let's go ahead and import our connect function from Redux. Right, this belongs to Redux. Oh, it belongs to, let me see, React Redux, and the function is called connect, and this is same as your counter over here. Okay, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to connect this component just like this. Okay, so export default and then call our connect function. Okay, keep this empty for now, and then we'll come back and fix it. And this is how you connect your component. Okay, let's go ahead and remove this 32. There's going to get a initial state here. Okay, so now my component is connected because I'm using the connect keyword. Okay, connect function, but I need to pass in something, right? And what was that called? I need to pass in a function, right? That's, yes, higher order function, and that's called map state to props. Again, you can name it anything you want, but it has to be a function that kind of maps your state into a property. That's the purpose of this method. So it's called map state to props. Okay, again, it's going to get a state passed in, and then this is going to be mapped to a prop. Takes in an object. All right, now look at the counter, same concept over here. This time it's count, and it's taking the count from the state. Let's go ahead and call this dose count, and this belongs to state dot the reducer. Which reducer does it belong to? It belongs to this reducer. Okay, so we're going to put this name. Okay, and what is the state actually called? It's called this dose count. Okay, okay, and then the last thing is just pass this method, this function inside your connect. All right, if you see the 0 over here, this means that it's actually connected and you're getting the initial state. All right, at least it's getting the initial state. Let's check our first one, still working. Okay, second one, okay, it's getting there, it's not working. So what am I still missing? It's connected, and I know it's connected because I'm getting the initial state of 0. Otherwise I wouldn't have gotten it. Okay, so what am I missing when I click this? Actions. Excellent. So I'm missing the actions. So I've already stubbed out the function over here. All I need to do is just call those action or dispatch. Okay. Now my dispatch function is coming in my props, right? Again, if you look at the, if you open up this component over here, we are on this one. You will see that I'm getting a dispatch method automatically being passed into my props. So I can use this method to dispatch the actions. Okay, so it's props dot dispatch, and my actions are actually an object, right? And what is the property of my action? What is required? Type. Excellent. And type should be same as this one, right? This is my reducer expecting this type. So I'm going to copy this so that I don't make any typos. Okay, so this will dispatch my increment action, and then same thing I need to do in my decrement action. Instead, the action would be this. Okay, and this should technically complete. I think we have our reducer, we have our actions, and we connected our component to our store because we can see these this initial state coming up. Okay, now if I click this, it should work. Let's go ahead and test the first one out because this was already working. So make sure we didn't break this. Yeah, this looks good. Next one. Ah, there it is. Increasing by 2 and then decreasing by 2. Okay, so the new thing over here is if you have multiple components, this is how you combine all these components. All right, so if you look at my structure, components, 2 different components, and in my app.js, I have my 2 reducers defined, and then these 2 reducers are being combined and then being passed into my store. All right, questions? So the purpose of this exercise was, if you have, first you build just one component, now we are building more than one component. This is how you would do it. Okay, and you can see how each component kind of differentiates the state that it requires. Like my those counter requires only those counts, so that's why I'm just using your counter just requires count and it's using the count. Similarly, you have more than one more components, and that's how you would differentiate them. Okay, the only thing requirement is you use the combine reducer and then combine all the reducers into one and then pass it to the store. Okay, our store again has all the possible states, which are these 2 in our program. Okay, questions? Good. All right, last thing I want to show is how to refactor this code now. Okay, so the problem with this is my app.js is becoming huge, right? If you have more reducers, you're going to keep adding. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. All right. So the purpose of this is how do we refactor? And if you remember from the example on the Redux side, they have a nice Redux folder and they have all your reducers and everything over there. So I'll show you how to take this code and kind of convert into that code. Okay. So I have my components. I'm going to create a folder called Redux in my source, and I'm going to move all my Redux related components into this. Okay. So let's kind of reduce our app first. Okay. So our app has reducers. So I'm going to move our reducers into our Redux folder. So since I have more than one, I'm going to call reducers. Okay, and then how many? I have 2 reducers. I'm going to create, let's call it counter.js, and then those counter.js. You will see I'm not using the word reducers in these file names. And the reason is because it's under the folder reducer. It's kind of, to me, it's kind of redundant. If somebody is looking at my folder, this means these both are actually reducers. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all the reducer code inside each one of them. All right. So let's look at our count. Let's close this. From my app.js, what is this counter? Those counter. I'm going to close this. So let's go ahead and remove this, my reducer, into my counter reducer. Okay. And then from the import, what do I need to import? Let's see. Oh, I need the initial state also, so let me go ahead and put our initial state. Okay. I don't need this, so I'm going to remove this from this one. Okay. All right. Am I missing? Do I need to import anything? No. There's no Redux actually. It's just a function with 2 parameters. So actually, I don't need to import anything. So this should be good. Yeah. I need to export this. Okay. So let's go ahead and just export this function out. So I'm going to put export default. Okay. It's kind of, the function name is kind of redundant. Don't you guys think? So if I export this by default, it's going to export a function, and I can name anything I want. Right? That's the advantage of default. So I'm going to just remove the name of the function. All right. So let's do the same thing with our those counters. I'm going to remove this, move it here. Bring our initial state also. We don't need this anymore. Need to move it here. Okay. Let's remove this. Okay. Then I'm going to just export default this thing. Okay, no Redux required. All I did was I moved all the stuff from here and then into my reducer folders. Well, of course, this is breaking. It doesn't know what to do with this. So let's go ahead and move our combine also into a different file. So looks like I need these two. These are defined over here in my combine reducer. So here's see if this makes sense. What I'm going to do is in my reducers, I'm going to create a so all I need from my store is my root reducer. So I'm going to create an index file, and you guys remember that if the index kind of gets imported automatically, right? In my index, I'm going to create our this thing, create our combined reducers. So let's go ahead and move this in this. Okay, and this is required by our store, so I'm going to export this export default. Okay, we'll see where this gets used. So let's go ahead and fix this first. So combined reducers is part of this thing. So I'm going to move this here. Okay, what else do I need? These two, right? So let's go ahead and import our counter. Let's go ahead and call this counter reducer. All right, you see I'm using the same names. Again, this was default, so this kind of allows me to use any name that I want. And then I want my those counter. So let's go ahead and use the same name. Okay. And this should make this happy at least. Okay, so I removed my reducers, created a folder reducers under Redux, have my reducers, and the only need for these reducers are in the combined reducers method, right? I don't need these anymore after this. So what I did was I created an index.js, and this I can export anywhere, and it will get this combined reducers. Okay, so these two are only required in this file. They shouldn't be required anywhere else, because combined reducers function is the only one that requires these methods. Okay, but where are these methods required? Like, where do I need to pass this combined reducers? In the store. Okay, so I need to pass in the store. So in your Redux example, you will see that they have a separate file called store. So I'm going to kind of follow the same strategy. In my Redux folder, I'm going to create a new file called store, and I'm going to move the code for store inside this file. So this is the only code that is required. So I'm going to create a store. Okay, and this store, let's go ahead and export this. Export store. Okay, I'm missing some of the imports. So what do I need from here? I need this. So all I did was I moved it into a different file. Okay, so now I need to pass in reducer over here. What would be the import? Which file? So I need my both reducers here. Index, right? So I don't actually need to import all of my, I just need to do this, right? Because it's an index file, right? By default, remember the advantage of making it index.js is that you don't need to specify /this. Index kind of automatically gets imported when you do the import for the folder. So that's what helped me over here, is that it imports from my reducers folder the index.js. And what does my index.js has? It has the function combined reducers, right? And in turn, these combined reducers are using these two. So these are hidden from my store. My store doesn't care, doesn't know. All it needs is this thing, this root reducer. So I have kind of isolated all this stuff. So you can look at this code and you can understand that what's going on. Okay. Now this store is still required underneath this. Is required in my app.js, right? This part I cannot change. It still has to be there, right? So what do I have to do to fix this? Right? Import, excellent. Import my Redux store, and this, let's call it store, so that we don't have to change any name here. Okay? You see the zeros come up. This tells me that my initial state is good, so this means it's reading the correct one. My app has now reduced to only like 16 lines from a bunch of stuff. Let's go ahead and test it out before make sure this is working. Okay, the first one looks good. This looks good. Let's try this one. All right. So both of them are working. Okay, so what I did was kind of refactored all my code into kind of similar, if you look at the Redux documentation and the example over there. So I have my components, app.js, simple, okay, just passing in the store. Now my Redux has everything. My Redux has reducers. These are my reducers, okay, and then my store is separate, all right. You can actually go one step further. What you will see is actions. So right now in my reducers, these actions are still there, but they're kind of like the hard coded, right? If I make a mistake over here, right, where does this trickle down to? It goes to my component, right? Because my component is actually firing this exact same one. So even if you make a typo over here or typo over there, everything kind of gets messed up. So what we can do is we can actually take this out also and create a separate actions and then use them as our placeholders, all right? Before I do that, any questions in how I came to that folder? Okay, this is also good. So usually you will see your actions also kind of separated out. So what I mean is I'm going to create a folder here. This time I'm going to call it actions, okay? And and what are these? These are my type of actions, right? So I'm going to create a new file and call action types. Okay, and what are my action types? Export const increment. So I'm basically creating constants over here. That's what I'm doing. But this my IntelliSense will help me after this. I can do a action types dot, and it will. I don't have to keep typing this string and make a mistake. This will help me in that case. So let's go ahead and define all our four function actions. So this is going to be decrement, increment. This is going to be those underscore and okay. This is this. So all I'm doing is creating constants that I can use in my program. Okay, so these are my action types that I have defined. And then I can import these and actually create some actions. So actions are basically JavaScript objects with types, these things. Okay, so what I'm going to do is in this same folder I'm going to create a index.js so that it can be automatically imported, and over here I'm going to define my actions. From my action types I'm going to import increment, decrement, increment, and all my four actions. Oops. And then I'm going to create my actions here. So my first action would be increment, and this is going to be a JavaScript object with type. And then I don't have to put in a string, I can just use this. Okay, and this becomes my decrement. Let's call this dose increment, and this is going to be decrement. Okay, so this is decrement. You see the IntelliSense part kind of helps me because these are the constants that are defined, so I don't have to worry about making the typo or anything. Okay, so what I did here, I just took my actions, I created a separate file for my actions. These are actions, right? Type and some action, right? What I can do is I can use in my components. So let's go back to our component. I need to pass in an action over here, right? And what do I have to do? Just import. What am I importing? Dot slash redux slash actions. All right. So all my actions kind of are available to me to use over here. All right. So what actions do I need here? I just need increment and decrement because those are in the other ones. And then let's go ahead and replace this action with increment, and similarly this action gets replaced with decrement. Okay, so less chance of making any typos and issues over here. So this is working. Okay, and then I'm going to just complete the second one, and then this should be good. So I'm going to import same thing actions, but this time I don't need the, so I need those increment and those decrement actions, and then replace this with our those increment, and then those decrement. Okay. This one is working as usual. Let's test this out. This one is also working. Okay. So the last thing I did was I kind of hard coded. I kind of took the constants and put it in a separate file as actions. And this is, you will see that your actions are usually kind of put in a separate file. Again, it kind of helps you because so that we don't make like typos and all that stuff. So what we did was, so we first created our action strings, basically, kind of assigned them to constants. And then in our index.js, we are creating those actions. Remember, the actions are objects with a type, and we are importing this type from our action types. Not yes.
Those two files seem a little redundant.
Which two files?
The action type and index for the action.
Okay.
So what's the advantage of not just creating that object in one file?
Yeah, you can do that. So you're seeing these action types, copy them and put it in the index.js over here and then pass it back over here.
Right.
Yeah, you can do that. It's more,
But they must have a reason to do it.
well, again, it's more like a drive principle. There's no, I mean, remember when we started this app, we did everything in one file. You can do it. It's more like a drive principle that these exist, that your actions, this index file only has actions. That's all this file is doing. So that's why you only have action. It doesn't concern what these are. What I'm trying to say is that this file will only have my actions. And this file will have all my action types. Remember, in my actions, I need a type, right? So my action types means that these are the different action types that exist in my app. It's kind of way to showcase saying, oh, this is how my drive principle is. And that's all. I mean, from the coding perspective, yeah, you can totally put this in a index.js and it will still work. Again, we did it in just one file, app.js, and that was working. So we don't need it. This is more like a drive principle, how you refactor it. And this is the kind of, remember like in our MERN apps, we're using MVC. So this is kind of like the standard that they're using, and this is what you will find in your Redux documentation. So I'm kind of following the same thing.
It's kind of funny to me that when this is considered drive, and you're writing the words increment and decrement extra times to do it.
Right, but the advantage is that you're not going to make those. You see how you can easily make mistakes over here, any typo or anything. But if you have constants declared, this will IntelliSense will actually help you and actually have the exact same one. So
Like 6 times here instead of
right,
Yeah, if you have like a bigger list of actions
right,
in your action types and you're changing what they do, it
Yeah.
makes sense to keep them all together.
Right.
And when you change one or all of them, you don't have to like change the way
right.
that it's injected.
Yeah. And then it kind of, I mean, it has it again. You develop the app, and if you have more actions, you will see how it kind of comes into play. At this point, the app is small. We just have like 4 actions, so it doesn't make sense that you can put it over there. But usually, this is how you will see that they have defined the actions and action types. There's something called action creators also. I won't go over there, but you will see some functions that actually are returning these actions. These are called like action creators, but that's a different story. Okay, so we converted our simple app first into a Redux app, then we went ahead and added a new component with Redux, and then we kind of refactored everything into a Redux folder, which has your reducers, actions, and a store, right? 3 main components, all 3 of them are here: actions, reducers, store. Any questions? Good. I'll post this. I'll push this solution to GitLab also, so you guys can take a look at it. And if you guys are planning to use in your what are the views and the partial?
Got jokes.